You're listening to Planet Vero Radio. I am Cindy Schwartz, and this is the Patient Partners Show, and we are also broadcast on podcast as well on Spreaker and all the platforms. We're on iHeartMedia. And today I've got my co-host Jeannie Roller with me, and I also have Lynn and John with me who want to talk about an actual story. It's their story that happened to them at a hospital that was in Iowa for a surgery that John had. And I want to kind of walk the listeners through and let them know that John and Lynn are just average people like any of us are. And when they went in for this surgery and they kind of had unbelievable trust of what was going to happen. And I want to get right to the story because 10 minutes isn't that long for a podcast and for this kind of information to get out there. And just let listeners know that basically this can happen to anyone. And we've said this before, Jeannie Roller, you have, I have, umpteen times, that's why we started doing this and started looking into it, because it happened to us and we couldn't believe it, and we couldn't believe the trust that got obliterated, and we honestly didn't know what to do. I still don't know some days what to do, who I can contact, and how I can get some help so this never happens again. So Jeannie Roller, you're in Indiana, and you're going to pipe in whenever you want, and then Lynn and John, you're going to go ahead and introduce yourselves real quick, and let's get right to the story about what happened, what the surgery was, and what you all expected. So we're going to talk to John, and John's going to tell us about the surgery that he had and really what his trust was and then what happened. So go ahead, John, and tell the listeners what surgery that you had and what you thought was going to happen.
All right, thank you. It was a venous ablation, basically repairing a vein down above my ankle. It was at a major hospital in the state of Iowa. I had full trust in them. I was taught to believe, doctors know what they're doing. Like I said, this was a major reputable hospital, so I took everything they told me at face value. They told me very good detail as to how the physical procedure would go as far as inserting wires into my vein. The problem lied in what I was told as far as what to expect. This was my first surgery of any kind, other than stitches, so I had no idea what questions to ask.
Mm-hmm. And who was the person or people that told you this really good information up front?
It was the doctor who was supposed to be the surgeon performing the procedure. We found out later through my medical records that this doctor may not have done all of or any of the actual physical procedure.
Okay, so we're going to get into that. This is going to be at least a two-part podcast, because 10 minutes goes by fast. So in this 10 minutes that we have, I want you to kind of set the listeners up for how you were, that day you found out that you had to have a surgery, and then how did you feel about all of that? Were you, you certainly probably weren't happy, but were you trustful and that kind of thing?
Actually, as strange as it sounds, I was very happy for the surgery.
Okay.
And the reason is I've been dealing with the vein had exploded to the point where it created an ulcer, an open wound on my ankle. I've been going through compression therapy for well over a year and a half, and it was not healing. So as I was led to believe by the doctor and this doctor's assistants, this would cure everything. So I was actually excited for that standpoint. I was absolutely terrified going in, knowing I would be completely sedated with anesthesia.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend of mine from my hometown who went in for a routine procedure. They got the anesthesia wrong, and it legally blinded him as a result. So that was in the back of my mind. I was terrified of that.
Okay, so you were terrified of that, but like you just said a couple of minutes ago, the questions that you had and the information that this office gave you was settling to you. You were okay to go forward with this surgery.
The lesser of two evils would be the phrase that I would use.
Okay.
Did I like the idea of a surgery? Of course not. But I was told by these doctors, who I respected and at the time, that this would fix everything. And I'm like, you know what? If I have to, put my head through a brick wall to fix this leg, then let's just do it and get it done with.
Okay. A lot of people face that. Certainly people that have cancer, a lot of people face that when you get kind of a life-threatening thing. you don't really know what to do, but you're going to go with it because you know where you are right now you're in pain, you're sick, you don't feel good, so maybe this is a fix.
And that's what I was hoping.
Okay.
Going to the day of the procedure, as I walked in, like I said, this was a major hospital. Everything was, pretty and had bows on it.
Okay, so let's back up for just a second. You got your questions answered from the questions that you knew right then. Was there anything else that they gave you, that office, literature, information, anything, booklets like that to prepare you for any of this? Considering you didn't know a lot of questions to ask?
There was a large surgical packet, the 2-pocket folder, the kind, you get for your kids at school.
Okay.
And it was filled with a ton of information on what to do, after the procedure, how to wash the day of the procedure, information on where to park, when to park, when to be there, all of the details superficially before I physically walked into the hospital. This packet had everything in there. So again, taking things at face value and respecting surgeons, I'm like, well, this is all I need to know.
Okay. So you felt comfortable going to this operation. Your trust was intact and everything, you thought, wow, this is pretty good.
Yeah. I was, I you don't want to use the word happy and excited,
right.
But again, I could finally, after a year and a half of dealing with this open ulcer, I could, what I thought at the time, see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay. That's fair. That's a fair assessment. Then what happened? You got the packet. Did you read all the information? Did you have more questions? Did you have the opportunity to talk to that surgeon again of any questions that you had gotten from that pamphlet?
No, I did not have an opportunity to talk to the surgeon again. Reason being, this was in the summer of 20, so that was the COVID summer.
Okay.
All preoperative face-to-face meetings were canceled. Any non-essential meetings were canceled. A nurse took it on her own to call me and do the preoperative meeting consultation over the phone.
Okay, so I'm just going to stop here for a second. So everyone is kind of used to that now. I think 2 years later, we're kind of sick of a lot of it, but we know that the stories got skewed. The way that we used to do things kind of got skewed there for a year or two, certainly in the time that you're talking about, John, that maybe they were ebbing and flowing, trying to fill in the pieces, not knowing what to do because it was a new thing. But you still had an opportunity to ask some questions if you wanted to. I
did. But the problem is, when you've never had a surgery, how do you know what questions to ask?
Right. Okay. No, I totally get that. Jeannie Roller, we have like a minute. Do you have a comment or anything about this? Because I want to leave the listeners for the next podcast to find out what actually happened to John. Given that it was COVID, we get that. But, what do you think, Jeannie Roller?
Well, his story sounds like so many I've heard in the past. I mean, people aren't aware of what is really going to happen.
Okay.
And that seems to be the way they like it.
Okay,
the medical community.
The medical community. So that's kind of the underlying thing that we've all basically got into the situation because of. And we're trying to figure out what's a better way to do it. So, John, we have like a minute left. At this point, you're okay to go to the surgery.
I am. And then as I'm walking in, then we get into the actual day of the surgery.
Mm-hmm. And you're okay walking in there. They got you your parking space. I'm being a little facetious. You know that, you kind of met a few of the people. You talked to a couple of the people, and you're feeling okay.
I am. The one thing that at the time didn't really resonate with me, but looking back, hindsight being 2020, I received 3 separate phone calls from various nurses prior to my surgery day. One talking about, how to physically find the parking ramp. Another one talking about, reminding me about, fasting before the surgery and how to wash using the cleanser that they gave me. Mm-hmm. And another one verifying my ride. There were 3 opportunities for them to give me details.
So let's just stop right there. So they've given you some information, and you're set to go into the surgery, and you have a good frame of mind about it.
Correct.
Okay. You've been listening to Planet Vero Radio. Please stay tuned.